Hey, Ethan, are you ready for your one question with an expert?
I am. You're the expert in this scenario, right?
No, not. We're flipping the switch on this one. This one's
Okay.
all about you and your perspective. So, as I say, it's one question, but it's kind of a loaded question. And for you with the podcast and customer experience, man, just yours is, why is it so important today for growing companies, frankly, any company, but let's stick to growing companies, to build customer experience into the DNA of their organizations?
Sure. In one word, it's differentiation. And so the reason that matters is that in most businesses, there's some level of commoditization. If there isn't, it's coming soon, right?
Yeah.
Product parity, hyper competition. It's easier to start a business than ever. It doesn't mean it's easy to be successful at it, but it's easier to start a business. There are resources available, whether it's podcasts, blogs, easier to file legal paperwork, et cetera. It's like our ability to create moats and to add depth to them around our businesses is really difficult in most industries. Now, there are some with extremely high capital costs and things like that that create some barriers. But in general, most of us are in commoditized or commoditizing spaces. And so when we think about what's going to differentiate us, why is an employee going to say, yes, I want to work with those people? Or why is a customer going to say, okay, I've got 3 approximately equivalent options, approximately equivalent prices, approximately equivalent online reviews. Why am I going to choose this one over the other one? It comes down to customer experience.
Yeah, no, it's such a good answer in so many facets. So I want to dig in a little because we talked about employee experience a little bit too, or why is that employee? And I've seen challenges with some companies that we're going to do CX and we're going to do it right. And they do nothing but talk about the process, how more customer service than I would call customer experience. So maybe we could take a tiny half step back and get your definition of what is customer experience and how do you kind of get the organization to embrace it and start to, do you either get it or you don't get it, or can you have a plan?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So there are 2 layers to customer experience. One of them is the mechanical part of it, and it is important. And I think that's kind of what you're talking about when people do kind of like half measures, is because they're doing this half of it, which is, some version of like journey mapping. If you're doing it well, it's like, what are the moments that matter? What are the emotionally infused moments? Where do things tend to go wrong, or where do things tend to go really, really right? Or they go approximately right, but we could, if we executed these moments better along the customer journey, that they would go incredibly right and leave really positive impressions. But that's the mechanical piece, and that does matter. But the other piece of it is how we make people feel. It's the emotional part of it. It's the emotional resonance. And the reason that emotion is important is that it drives both memory and motivation. Emotion drives memory and motivation. This is scientifically true. And so if we want to leave impressions on people, the kinds of impressions that make you referable when you're not around, right? Like, hey, do you know anyone that does this, that, or the other thing? Yes, you got to talk to my friends at this company, right? That kind of stuff that matters is based in an emotional resonance. And so we need to think about, so I've asked this question, what is customer experience, to well over 100 revenue operators for the most part in hosting this podcast. And what I found across all of these answers is that you'll hear the mechanical, you'll hear the emotional. And the way that I boil it down is customer experience is how we make people feel. How do we make people feel about us, about our team members, about our product or our service? How do we make people feel about themselves? How do we make people feel about their situation? How do we make them feel about our brand? Like, we don't get to control all of these things. This is now transitioning to employee experience. We don't get to control exactly how all of that goes, but we can do our best to manage it. And I think the best, most effective way to manage this with consistency, to produce the type of emotional resonance that characterizes the experience of working with us or the experience of being a partner of ours, starts with, what does it feel like to be an employee of ours? What does it feel like to be a team member within this company? And I'll back this up with 2 pieces of research, one older, one newer. Salesforce and Forbes Insights released this, I forget the name of the study. I can send you a link if you want it. And they surveyed like 350 people. And I forget the criteria, but they were all VP level or above, and their companies were all 20 million or 200 million or above. So they had these criteria. And they asked them a series of questions around these themes. And the causal links that were kind of proven out through the survey as well as the deep interviews was employee experience drives customer experience. That's to say, an excellent employee experience is a precursor and increases the likelihood of an excellent customer experience. Likewise, an excellent customer experience drives revenue growth. And so employee experience alone does not drive revenue growth. It drives it as a function of improving customer experience. A great customer experience has a positive effect on employees. As you can imagine, if you have happy customers, it reinforces happy employees, but it does not cause it. But the interesting thing is, when I read this study, it reminded me of a book that I read years ago myself, which was published years before I read it, called The Service Profit Chain. It's written by 3 professors at Harvard Business School, and they proved out causal links to profitability and revenue growth. They drove it back through customer experience and satisfaction, loyalty. But it all came back to, if you want to invest $1 today in improving revenue growth and profitability, invest it in what they called internal service quality, which is essentially employee experience, recruiting, interviewing, selecting, hiring, onboarding, developing, coaching, training, equipping, surrounding people with what they need to be successful and the autonomy to do it well, to provide opportunities for learning and growth, et cetera. Like they proved it out across a series of studies that is the primary place to invest in order to produce these things that seem distant from it. So I think, to your point, we overlook how important it is to have challenged, satisfied, engaged employees in driving all of this. That is, in my experience over the past 2 years hosting the show and in 20 plus years of professional experience, I think that is the key to a successful organization.
Yeah, no, I'm 100% on board. And, we've chatted in the past where I've come, full circle. So it's full circle or 180, that the mission of the company and the vision and what you're driving is, as you said, if you can't get the employees excited about what you're doing, they're not going to provide that next level of service or experience to the customers because they're not excited about it. And people just don't realize how much that is going to drag down the bottom line. I think the easier one to see is churn, right? Bad customer experience, I'm not coming back. But where so many younger companies, newer companies fail to see is the growth potential coming out of those extremely satisfied customers. You can read the book on raving fans. But again, an excited customer that has a really good experience, even if an average product, is going to tell more people about that. And guess what? It's going to drive your pipeline without you having to do anything other than provide that experience. So
yeah, I mean, that's another key piece of it, is this idea of your customers becoming your best marketers. That's definitely in this customer experience conversation.
Yeah, it has to be. So I know I can talk to you for another 30 minutes, and I know I hit you with a couple of prongs on the question, but man, very insightful. I appreciate it. I have to circle back with a question number 2 with an expert for you, because I do believe this topic is so important. But Ethan, I appreciate you taking a few minutes to chat with me today, and have a great rest of your day.
Happy to do it. Thanks so much.